No, sing it, Jacki.
Try to walk away and I stumble. I got it.
Oh my God, everybody! Macy Gray's here.
Oh my goodness.
That sounds like you worked on that. That is a...
Oh, who's to say that I did not?
Welcome to 1999, the podcast. I am John Brooks. This is 1999 at 25 for the entire month of July because we're Generation Xers and every once in a while we slack off and don't do an episode for the summertime. So we're going to do all of July today. It's going to be fun. It's going to be some ups and some downs to the month of July. A lot of stuff went down. But joining me, I'm very pleased to say, is Jacki Krestel. Jacki, how's it going?
It's going great, John. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Talk about 1999. Great year.
I'm delighted to have you. You write for Southside Sox, which is a White Sox-based website. Do you also edit that website? What do you do?
No, not really. They all really flow through the editor-in-chief. I'm one of the editors, but that just means that I'm given more work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Although
That's
this
cool.
year it's I took a step back this year for, if you follow baseball, you will know it's for obvious reasons. There's not really a lot to cover for the Chicago White Sox right now, except our race to the bottom.
Well, there is. Yeah. It's historic.
I took a step back because Mike Clevenger got added to the 40-man roster, and I said I couldn't stand that close to it. That's the real reason.
Oh, fair enough. But you're a big baseball fan, a big Chicago gal, and a big 90s person. So July had some fun baseball stuff. We're going to talk a little White Sox. We're going to talk a little All-Star Game. We're going to talk about a bunch of things. But there's a lot to talk about in July, not least of which is that this was one of the biggest months for conspiracy theorists in what was one of the conspiracy theorist years in our modern history. Before we get to all of that, let's do a rundown of the movies that graced the silver screen in the month of July, including the release of the 10th and 9th highest grossing movies of that year. In addition to what, alongside with The Sixth Sense, a month later, was one of the two genuine surprise hits. We'll get to that in a second, but starts off on July 2nd with Summer of Sam, Spike Lee's film that will be the subject of our upcoming episode that is next on the docket. And then the one that came out of nowhere and was a generation-defining hit was July the 9th, the release of American Pie. American Pie, a movie that reintroduced the sort of gross-out teen comedy, teen sex comedy, a la Porky's and that sort of thing from the 1980s. But with a new kind of 90s vibe. A movie that we covered in the very first round of this show, and one that has not aged especially well, but still has endearing elements to it. Jacki, you're laughing a little bit. What's your take on American Pie?
Well, when I was 17 years old, I loved American Pie.
Of course you did.
I was laughing a little bit in that you are correct that it has not aged well, but nothing really from that era has.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, when you're 17 years old, that kind of humor appeals to you when you're a junior in high school, as you're kind of learning about what it means to, as you start dating, although I don't know when kids start dating nowadays, but as you start seriously dating. And of course, I was also in band, so I really enjoyed the band camp aspect of that.
Yep.
Although I will tell you that band camp is not like that, not in my experience. I don't know what kind of band camp this girl was going to, but it was not like that. I wish that it was.
I've heard people say the opposite, that they're like, oh yeah, band camp was gross and disgusting and we were all a bunch of like slutty perverts. And so, I guess it depends on what band and what camp you're going to.
Camp wasn't like that, but band in general was a lot of just
right.
Yeah. My first high school boyfriend was the guitar player in the jazz band. which
Of
was
course.
very
Of
exciting
course.
for me. Very
Yes.
exciting for me.
That's
Um,
basically a rock star. Yeah.
right. But I wasn't a flautist and I didn't do what that girl claimed in that movie. I don't know
Michelle.
how.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
enjoyed that movie.
we were kind. I mean, I think it has a lot of merit to it, right? Like, obviously, there's a whole gag that revolves around sexual assault, which is just like not great,
Right.
and it goes on for a long fucking time.
Mhm.
Uh, but it also is a movie that had like characters that felt in many ways like a lot more realized and plausible and like three-dimensional than you typically get with those kinds of movies. It had like kind of its heart in the right place in weird ways. It was trying something different and new, and I think that's what sort of struck a chord with people. But yeah, again, like there are movies that
Yeah.
just don't necessarily stand the test of time for just the way that we become better people over time, which is good. We should,
Right. When you know better, you do better. But,
exactly.
American Pie for Gen Xers is kind of like what Superbad was for millennials. Like that was our coming of age
Yes.
story.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I never really realized that Superbad was big with millennials. I loved Superbad, but I was also like in my mid
Right.
20s when
Right.
so, so I don't
Me
really know what the
too.
millennials were doing. So also that day, Arlington Road, which we just covered in our last episode, and then a big one on July the 14th in the Angelica Theater in New York City. The Blair Witch Project is released. It has expanded to more indie theaters that weekend and then goes nationwide on July the 30th. This is one of the defining films of the year, also one we covered in our first round. Do you have the Blair Witch Project story? Did you ever was there ever a like moment where you thought it was real?
I saw it when it came out in the theaters. And I absolutely thought it was real because there was a website for it. And I did not have the digital, um, you know, awareness to know that that wasn't real.
And a
So I'm like,
documentary on the Sci-Fi Channel about the Blair Witch that came out before. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I loved it for the same reason I love like what's on the Discovery Channel, the mermaid documentary.
yeah, right.
Uh, no, I saw it in the theater, Blair Witch, and I'm not technically from Chicago. I'm from the south suburbs of Chicago, which is
Mhm.
like basically a forest preserve. And so I went to go see the movie, and with my friends from the softball team, and on her mom picked us up, and on the way home, we're driving through these long paths of a forest preserve, and I was like, oh my
Oh
god,
no! Oh no!
the Blair
Yeah, it
Witch
can
is
be that.
probably out there. So I absolutely thought I was real. I am embarrassed of how long it took me to realize that it was not real.
No, but I'm glad. I mean, I'm a couple years older than you are, but I was a subscriber to Premiere Magazine in the late 1990s because I was that kind of a nerd. So I was following Blair Witch from when it premiered at Sundance and like all of the marketing and the interviews with the directors and so on and so forth. And I thought it was a fascinating, like I just loved the idea of it. I loved the way it was marketed. I loved that it fooled some people. And I loved it so much that like even when I went to go see it, like I was able to suspend my disbelief because it was so they did such an amazing sort of like multimedia job of selling this idea that like it's a real like creating this myth around this thing. And what an innovative and singular movie that was as an experience. I waited in line around the block in Seattle to see it at one of the independent theaters before it went nationwide because
Oh,
I was desperate to
wow.
see it.
Good for
So
you.
yeah,
Look at you.
it was a lot of fun. Those midnight shows, good time. Also, July 14th, Muppets from Space, one we have not covered yet on the show, but we love the Muppets. It's a pretty good one. You ever seen Muppets from Space? That's
I
good.
have never seen Muppets from Space.
It's about this race of aliens that happens to look just like Gonzo, and so Gonzo comes to believe that he's an alien. Anyway, we'll get to it. July 16th, Eyes Wide Shut. Speaking of conspiracy theories, this, of course, a movie that has entered into the QAnon infrastructure because people think that Stanley Kubrick was secretly telling us what was really going on with the multimillionaires in their mansions and their sex parties and so on and so forth. Also, Eyes Wide Shut, one we covered in the first round. It's one of the seminal movies of that year. Also, the same day, in two very, very different movies, Lake Placid, which we have not gotten to yet, but I know that's a favorite of a lot of people, and The Wood, which we also have not gotten to yet, which is also a favorite of a lot of our listeners. I know that. July 23rd, one of our favorite movies on the show, Drop Dead Gorgeous, premieres, and it is the film debut of one Amy Adams, who is fantastic in that movie.
I love Amy Adams.
Have you seen Drop Dead Gorgeous?
I have not.
Oh, you must. It is a fantastic movie.
At the end of this podcast, you're going to have to give me a list of movies to watch because I didn't make it to the theaters that much. So I'm gonna need some tips.
Drop Dead Gorgeous is a mockumentary style movie about high school beauty pageants, and it's so fucking funny and it's so great.
Okay.
And Amy Adams, it's a minor role in it, and she like steals every scene she's in. She is
Who else is in it that we might know?
Kirsten Dunst, Denise Richards, Kirstie Alley, Allison Janney. Like a lot of people.
I love Allison Janney.
Yeah, she's so good in this movie. It's unreal. Ellen Barkin is fantastic in it.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to see this movie. One you don't got to see that we also have covered is The Haunting, which is terrible. Jan de Bont's remake of the better one from the 1960s, I want to say. And then the movie that has one piece of notable 1999 trivia attached to it. That is the Matthew Broderick live-action adaptation of Inspector Gadget. Also comes out on July 23rd. The one piece of 1999 trivia is that Inspector Gadget beat Mystery Men by a month to become the first movie to feature the song All-Star as a major part of the movie.
I love Mystery Men. I love Mystery Men.
Oh, we love Mystery Men too. It's absolutely.
They're number one. All others are number two or
lower. Now I get to go back to grad school. That was the deal. July 28th, another one that we also have covered, a cult favorite today, Deep Blue Sea, considered to be by many the second best shark movie ever made, behind Jaws. Can't say I disagree with that. Certainly, it's my favorite LL Cool J movie of all time. And July 30th, one of the highest grossing movies of the year, one of two Julia Roberts movies that we covered in our rom-com round, Runaway Bride. But Blair Witch Project and Runaway Bride both are 9th and 10th. In the 1999 box office. So that is the movies of the month. All right, turning to music. Some interesting stuff happening on the music scene. New releases from some pretty big names, including 80s throwbacks Great White and Rat, as well as albums from Mr. Bungle, Willie Nelson, Yanni, They Might Be Giants, Public Enemy, Los Lobos, Sophie B. Hawkins, Eric Clapton, Barry White, Widespread Panic, At the Drive-In, and The Verve Pipe. But most notably on July 5th, Macy Gray's On How Life Is, featuring the inescapable single, I Try. No, sing it, Jacki.
Try to walk away and I stumble. I got it.
Oh my God, everybody. Macy Gray's here.
Oh my goodness.
That sounds like you worked on that. That is a...
Oh, who's to say that I did not?
That's an almost unbelievably good Macy Gray impression.
I'm going to put that in my Twitter bio.
I liked I Try a lot. I liked Macy Gray quite a bit, but it was a good song. It was an earworm. It was hard to get away from. But yeah, pretty good song, and it stuck around for a while in the old Winamp playlist.
It's a Winamp. Very nice.
Day. And then on July the 27th, the debut album A Cheap and Evil Girl from Bree Sharp, featuring the infectious and of the moment novelty hit David Duchovny.
Why Don't You Love Me?
Why Don't You Love Me?
Okay.
Asking the song we were all asking in the 1990s, David Duchovny, Why Won't You Love Me? I love that song. It's hilarious, but also just a really good pop song. So, and finally, on July 27th as well, Destiny's Child's sophomore album, The Writings on the Wall, featuring Bills, 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 and Say My Name. The album went on to sell 1.6 million copies that year and 7 million by 2015, making it the second best-selling girl group album of all time in the United States today.
That album holds up, by the way.
Yeah.
That Destiny's
Yeah.
Child
Yeah.
album holds up. Bills, Bills, Bills is still a jam.
Yeah.
It's regularly on my Spotify list.
I
Regularly.
was never a big Destiny's Child fan, and so while I was kind of researching this and I was looking at that album and then the other albums, I'm like, oh no, this is the one that has like the songs that I like thought were pretty cool. Like this is definitely the album with the songs that are kind of jams on it, as far as so I can kind of see. I guess this is probably like the one that's considered the best, right? This is like
Yeah, I would say that.
yeah.
That's the
Do
one.
you
I mean,
have
it's the one
any?
I like the best.
Do you have any guess what the number one best-selling girl group album of all time in the U.S. is?
Girl group in the
Yep.
U.S. Is it from 1999? Is that my
It is
hint?
not, but it's like same era, a little earlier.
It's not the Spice Girls, is it?
You know, yeah. So that's a good guess, right? Like that's something that I was sort of thinking, and then no, it's not the Spice Girls. It's one that was once I tell you what it is, you'll be like, oh yeah, because it had
Let's hear it.
several massive hits from it. The number one is TLC's "Crazy Sexy Cool."
Oh my god! I can't believe I didn't think about that. I
Yeah,
love TLC.
yeah. As soon as I read that, I'm like, oh, of course. I was like, yeah, it's
Right.
fucking waterfalls and like
Yeah, I actually even like early TLC, like Ain't Too Proud to Beg TLC. I was an early adapter of TLC.
adapter of TLC.
T-Bow's Left Eye and Chili. I was an early
That's
adapter.
right. That's right. R.I.P. Left Eye.
R.I.P. IP. Yeah.
Sad story. All right, so that's what's happening in the culture, as it were. Let's talk about specific events happening throughout the month. We got some fun ones and some not so fun ones. So we're going to get to it. On July the 1st, the new Scottish Parliament is formally opened with a rock concert in the shadow of Edinburgh Castle. Wish I could have been there. Headlined by Garbage, whose lead singer Shirley Manson is at the time one of the biggest music stars from Scotland. Sounds cool. Scotland's cool. No other country.
Are there many very big pop stars from that country?
You would be really shocked when you to look at the number of bands and pop stars from Scotland.
Really?
Yeah. So like Travis, the band Travis, obviously is Scottish.
Yeah.
The band Teenage Fan Club is Scottish. Eurythmics. There's actually a ton. The Proclaimers, who of course wrote that song.
I love the Proclaimers.
So good.
And you got to get to the deep cuts from the Proclaimers. It's all really, really good.
Is it really? Because I've never heard a Proclaimers song aside from 500 Miles. So
I'm gonna see. You can send me the movies, and I will send you some Proclaimers.
I would love that because I mean that song just like never gets old. It is such a fucking perfect pop song.
Did you ever see the How I Met Your Mother episode where they keep playing it back to back in the car, and then they get really sick of the song, and they're like, "Don't worry, it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back," and it does.
I have seen, I think, 6 episodes of that show, maybe, and I'm pretty sure that's one of them.
Nice. That's another one that hasn't aged quite well. So I don't know.
How I Met Your Mother? That's not that. I feel like that's new. Isn't that new? When did that come out?
Okay, it seems new, but it's like it's not that new.
Like 2005 or something.
Yeah,
like that,
20 years ago.
Stop. That's not 20 years ago. That's hate speech.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Sorry.
Okay, July the 2nd, author Mario Puzo dies at the age of 78. His book, The Godfather, remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 67 weeks and sold over 9 million copies in its first 2 years in publication. July 3rd, indie rock icon Mark Sandman of Morphine collapses on stage at the Giardini del Principe in Palestrina, Italy, while performing with his band Morphine. He is soon pronounced dead of a heart attack at the age of 46. And Morphine immediately disbands. That was a big, like, Morphine was one of those bands when I was in high school that was, they had Boston roots. They would just like sometimes play random shows in Harvard Square for free. So they were very
really?
like,
That's awesome.
They were very connected to like the young emerging, sort of indie rock scene in Boston. And yes, I was very heartbroken when Mark Sandman died.
Oh.
And I didn't realize it was that long ago until I came across this. So, all right, we got a big one here, and this is kind of a long story. So, July the 6th, we have a major scandal that took place in the U.S. military involving an Army private named Barry Winchell. Do you know this story?
No, tell me about it.
Yeah, so this is what would be a triggering moment for the eventual collapse of the "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy, which you're probably, I
Oh,
mean,
good.
you were probably you were probably old enough to kind of remember like when that came into existence and some of the conversation around it. And I was probably in, I don't know, maybe like 7th or 8th grade, somewhere around that time when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was written into law, and it was like almost sort of presented as a progressive idea, because like it was like, no, it allows gay people to serve in the military, which they couldn't do before, so like that's good, it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
But of course led to a whole bunch of unintended and intended consequences that would claim some lives. So this is one of the times where early on in its existence it came under very severe scrutiny. Barry Winchell was a 21-year-old Army private who was beaten to death in his sleep by a fellow soldier, 18-year-old Calvin Glover. Apparently goaded on by Winchell's roommate, 25-year-old Justin Fisher, who were enraged that Winchell was in a romantic relationship with a transgendered showgirl and former Navy combat medic named Calpurnia Adams. Glover was found guilty of murder and given a mandatory life sentence. He continued to insist that Fisher had bullied him into the murder and tearfully apologized to Winchell's family at sentencing. Fisher pleaded guilty to 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 1 count of providing alcohol to a minor, and 3 counts of false swearing, and was sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. As part of his plea agreement, charges of participating as a principal to premeditated murder and being an accessory after the fact to premeditated murder were dropped. He was released in 2006, so he ended up serving like 5 years of his 12-year
Okay, well, I'm glad
term.
that they were convicted, but like, what was the fallout of that? What kind of congressional hearings happened?
Right.
What
Yeah.
what
Very
happened next,
little.
John?
Yeah, well, very little of the fallout was especially public. This was, again, probably you're old enough to remember the time when the idea of gay panic as a defense in murder was pretty normalized.
Yeah.
Where you could say essentially, like I was afraid of, you know,
Hmm.
gay
Yeah.
stuff. So I did murder. And like, yeah, this happened quite a
Yeah.
bit in the 1990s. So it wasn't as headline news grabbing as you would think, especially probably, if something like that were to happen today. And
Right.
but it did, as it sort of became something that people really could talk about and started to draw connect the dots between Don't Ask, Don't Tell and this happening, and just the idea of creating a sort of normalization of shame within the military. It is considered to be sort of like one of the triggering moments that led the snowball sort of rolling down the hill to eventually overturning Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was in fact repealed under President Barack Obama in 2011. But another one of the reasons why the story got traction is that they were made into an award-winning 2003 film called Soldier's Girl, starring Andre Braugher, Jane Fonda's son, Troy Garrity, as Winchell, and Lee Pace as Calpurnia Adams. Lee Pace is awesome. Yeah, so that's a bummer. That sucked.
Yeah.
Um,
The next time when you get to November of 1999, give me another shout out, because that's when the show The West Wing debuted, and they had an episode there where they focused on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So we can come back and
Oh
talk about
right, yeah.
that.
I've seen all of The West Wing. My wife rewatched it more recently than I have. but I vaguely do remember that episode. I'm gonna have to rewatch the whole thing.
I'm
I
on
don't
a
know.
constant rewatch. That's my
Are you
emotional
really?
support show. Yes. Um,
I
I
don't know that
saw
I
a
can do it
tweet.
right now. I have to wait till November to kind of see what happens before I think I'm
Sure,
ready to
it's very idealistic. It's like,
yeah.
the Barack Obama Democrats' wet dream is what The West Wing is.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but that's why I like it.
I've read essays that uh draw a direct line between like the existence of the West Wing and like the possibility of Barack Obama.
Oh,
Um,
really?
well, which basically, which say like the West Wing kind of created a space for like liberal patriotism that Barack Obama kind of latched onto. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's entirely wrong.
No.
There's also like people who have said that the what's his name in 24 playing the first like black president in a major television show also like
Hmm.
made it okay for Barack Obama to run for president. And like there's probably something to that. I don't know. I mean, the way that popular culture shapes
Yeah.
our actual culture is something that we shouldn't underestimate. But
So being from Illinois, I have sat in former president's, or at that point, former Senator Barack Obama's chair that he left at the state capitol.
did Rob Blagojevich sell it to you? Is that
Yeah.
Blago?
No, we don't have a great track record for governors over here until now.
Well,
Until
now I got
now.
a pretty good one now. Fingers crossed. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. But like, yeah.
But yeah, historically, we're not great. Not great historically.
Not great with mayors, not great with governors.
No.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, new guy seems cool. Let's hope no scandals happen there. He comes from a very visible family, so like you would think if he were scandalized, we would know about it by now. So
Yeah.
let's have that West Wing optimism. All right, speaking of trans issues and people who suck, July 8th, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third book
Oh
of the
my God,
JK
she
Rowling
sucks so
series,
much.
is
She
published.
sucks so much.
Somehow she managed to suck even more today than she's ever sucked
Today,
before.
just
Just like
today, like just
today, the day that we
it's
were recording,
awful.
she somehow managed to be terrible herself. It's making liking those books really hard. Please,
Yeah,
please, please just retire to your look. If you have a castle, just shut up. You got a fucking
right.
castle. You did it.
She's
You're done.
horrible. What a horrible.
Congratulations.
Anyway, but yeah, even just today about the Olympian, like, oh my
Oh
goodness,
my god. Yes.
she's horrible.
I've had a
I
hard
did
time.
enjoy the books though, and the movies.
They're good books. This is a good one. The third one's good.
So here's my story about Harry Potter in 1999 when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
Is when my high school decided to do one book, one school, where we all read the same book. And
Cute.
then we had, yeah, it was very cute. And then you would have a week dedicated to that book where
Right.
you would have roundtable discussions and trivia and like dress up days and things like that. And we did the first one, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Right.
And again, being from like the south suburbs of Chicago, I remember we did decorating for that, and there was a big banner in the hallway that said, "Who's your daddy? Harry Potter." And I'm like, "That's awesome. That's awesome. Who's your daddy? Harry Potter."
I don't understand.
I don't understand it. You just got to roll with it. You just got to go with it.
It's just a Chicago thing.
Suburbs of Chicago thing.
Yeah.
I would have got my ass kicked in Chicago for doing anything similar.
Yeah. I have a 10-year-old daughter who likes Harry Potter a lot. And I don't know.
I tried
It's
to
hard,
get my
man.
10-year-old daughter into Harry Potter, but then I decided not to push it too much because of JK Rowling's horribleness. And I don't want her to, get to an age where she starts realizing things and like, Mom, why did you push this on me? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my oldest started getting into it like watching the movies before JK Rowling started like just rage tweeting about trans people. So it's anyway, she sucks. But that book's good. All right, July the 12th. Greg Alexander issues a press release dissolving his band, The New Radicals. Alexander would go on to have a prolific career producing and writing songs for, among others, Enrique Iglesias, former Spice Girls Jerry Halliwell and Mel C, Rod Stewart, and, ironically, Hanson, even though he called them out by name in the band's one hit, the amazing You get what you
You
give.
got them. Yeah, I was gonna say I know one song by the New Radicals, and that's it.
That's all you need. It is
And
a
I remember the video with his stupid hat.
fucking banger. And his
Right.
Inside Out Mickey Mouse shirt. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was the
That
style
song
at the
rules.
time.
It's one of my favorite songs, literally one of my favorite songs of all time.
Hmm.
It is one of the greatest pop songs ever written. He's a great songwriter. I mean, he was into, like, he was mostly a music producer before he was sort of the band kind of took off.
Hmm.
Um, and I think he just like got one taste of rock stardom. He's like, I don't want to do this. Like, I just want to write. I just want to write songs and
I just
produce.
want to
And
talk shit about Hanson and
yeah. But other people can do that. I can just write that for Hanson and they can talk shit about
right.
themselves. Why not? I do think it's cute and funny though that he like wrote for Hanson.
Yeah, I thought Hanson wrote all their own songs. See, this is a very disillusioning podcast for
They
me.
don't. They do write a lot of their own songs and a lot of their own music. They've also sung songs by other people. And I think Hanson's also awesome. So
Yeah.
they're really rad. Anyways, the New Radicals would reunite once in 2021 to perform "You Get What You Give" for the inauguration of Joseph Robinette Biden, which I didn't know until now. Wish I'd seen that. All right. Baseball time, July the 13th, the American League wins the 70th annual All-Star Baseball game 4-1 at Fenway Park down the road in Boston. History's greatest pitcher, Pedro Martinez, strikes out the first four batters in the All-Star game at Fenway Park, earning All-Star game MVP, much as his fellow Red Sox Jarren Duran did this year. And the first pitch of the game was thrown out by none other than Teddy Ballgame, Ted Williams.
So clearly we have some Boston bias going on here. Clearly. The best pitcher of all time, Pedro Martinez.
I will stand by that. I think it was, and I know
All
there's
right.
a lot of like, you know, adjusting for time period and everything else, and like Sandy Koufax and fine, whatever. But like, if I have to pick one pitcher in his prime to like pitch a game for me that I must win, Pedro Martinez. Every
All
time
right.
I'm going to pick Pedro Martinez. But it's a
It's
fun
not a
conversation
bad
to have.
pick. It's not a bad
It's
pick.
really
I would.
not.
He's up there.
It's really not. If
Yeah.
Let's say this, if you were to judge just by like take any pitcher and pick like with and just only their 5 best years, right? For me, like if I had all the pitchers and all their 5 best years to pick from a menu, I'm always again picking Pedro Martinez. I just think like his run in his prime is just like unmatched.
All right, I'll let you have it.
But I've certainly argued this before, and I argue with myself sometimes about, you know, greatest pitchers and like whether Roger Clemens should be in the conversation, because even before he was juicing, Roger Clemens was one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Like, you know, Nolan Ryan.
Kinda,
Like if I watch Nolan Ryan pitch, like, you know, there's
yeah,
a lot.
I watched Nolan Ryan pitch too. My favorite player of all time is Robin Ventura. So when you put those two together,
Oh,
that's fun.
I love Robin Ventura. That's a good pick.
I love Robin Ventura too.
Good for you.
He was the third baseman as I like kind of came into baseball fandom, and that was right around the time he was winning all of his Gold Gloves.
Yeah.
And I had his poster in my room of like him wearing his Gold Glove, and he's got flames behind him. It's a hot corner. Yes.
Pretty sure I had a Mo Vaughn poster in my room.
Mo Vaughn, very nice.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, Nolan Ryan kicked the shit out of him, so that was fun.
I had a girlfriend in my early 20s, so her family was rich and had a house in the Florida Keys, and so she also knew nothing about baseball when we first met, and so she called me one time. We lived in New York City. She called me, and she was in Florida, and she says, "Hey, do you know who Ted Williams is?" And I was like,
"Oh my god."
I was like, "Yeah, I know Ted Williams." Like,
did you break up immediately? Immediately?
No, I should have. That should have been like,
yes.
But then she's like, because I'm touching his baseball bat. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like, so Ted Williams used to hang out in the Florida Keys all the time. And she was at this one dive bar that like Ted Williams went to all the time. And so they had a whole bunch of Ted Williams memorabilia, including like a signed used in-game baseball bat that he gave them.
Ridiculous.
And then she got to go behind the bar and fucking touch it. And I'm like, this sucks. You're terrible. This is supposed to be happening to me.
Thoughts and prayers.
Anyway,
Thoughts and prayers.
that's my Ted Williams story. Jackie, who is the only White Sox to make the All-Star team in 1999?
Maglio Ordonez.
God, yeah, it's good job. Wow. Pulled that one.
And he was
right
he
out.
was reserved. He did not start. He was the only one. Because that year, the White Sox finished with just their face in the, like, out, not with their face in the butts of the Indians, but
Hey,
we finished like 20 games back and we're in second place.
21 and a half, but you were close.
21 and a half? Okay. I was like, it was in the 20s. I was close.
75 and 86, second place. Man, Cleveland was good.
Yeah, that was.
They still had Manny. They still had
Manny Ramirez, right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
So they were still pretty great.
Yeah, Cleveland was very, very good for a very, very, very long time, and the White
now
Sox
are
never
again.
were.
They changed their
The
name.
White Sox never are.
Well, they one of my favorite baseball teams of all time, the 2005 White Sox.
Well,
Great
mine
team.
too, buddy. Mine too.
Loved that team, and I loved that World Series, and the fact that they won Game 4, sweeping the Astros on a generated run with Willie Harris and Jermaine Dye batting him in. Like, I was like, winning the World Series on Game 4 1-0 on a run that you put together is exactly how this team should win the World Series, because this is how they've won the entire season. But
Do you want to hear my fun 2005 White Sox story?
Sure.
I was at ALCS Game 2, which was also, you might know, as the drop third strike game.
Yeah.
I was there.
That's awesome. After the Red Sox won in 04, I was, they weren't great in 05, and I got on the White Sox bandwagon towards the end of the season. I was like,
nice.
Let's go. It's high time the White Sox fucking won something too. One more bit of White Sox trivia. 1999 was also notable in White Sox history for what reason?
Oh my God.
Debut
I don't know.
season
Give me a
for
hint.
the White Sox of what White Sox legend? 6-time All-Star,
God.
Rhode Island native.
Why am I drawing a blank? Oh my! I knew that Maglio Ordonez was the lone thing.
You pulled that one out, yeah.
Paul Konerko?
Konerko, good job.
Okay.
After having been traded from the Reds for Mike Cameron, which is...
I remember Mike Cameron.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I remember Mike Cameron, too. My dad really liked him, actually.
Paul Konerko, and of course, a major part of that 2005 White Sox team, alongside, frenemy AJ Pierzynski.
He's
Scott
in manager
Sednick.
Talks now.
Yeah.
Sednick.
I fucking hate and love AJ Pierzynski so much. It's ridiculous. Like, I just want to punch him all the time, but I also kind of adore him.
Remember, we picked, he was on the Twins for a really long time, who are one of our divisional rivals. So he was a piece of shit then.
Yep.
But then he comes to the South Side and punches Burnett in the face, and everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Oh, all right. That's it for baseball. July the 16th, speaking of conspiracy theories, John F. Kennedy Jr. dies alongside his wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and sister-in-law, Lauren Bessette, as a plane he was piloting crashed in Martha's Vineyard. He fell victim to what's called spatial disorientation while descending over the water at night, and consequently lost control of the plane. Kennedy did not hold an instrument rating and therefore was only certified to fly under visual flight rules. At the time of the crash, the weather and light conditions were such that all basic landmarks were obscured, making visual flight challenging, although still legally permissible. And this would go on to launch a whole new set of Kennedy conspiracy theories, because, as we now know, you either die a conspiracy theory or live long enough to become a conspiracy theorist. If you're a Kennedy. So his cousin now running for president, and apparently he also will be resurrected from the dead by QAnon at some point, because he's not actually dead, if you ask QAnon.
Is that right? Nuts. I did not brush up on my QAnon to come onto this podcast, but is that right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
RFK is not really alive, or John
JFK.
Jr.
JFK Jr. is not really dead. Hillary Clinton staged his death because he discovered
the pizza shop, the downstairs pizza shop.
Here's the conspiracy theory. JFK Jr. was going to be elected senator of New York, and Hillary Clinton wanted it. So Hillary Clinton arranged for JFK Jr.'s death JFK Jr. faked his death and has secretly been working with a sort of like undercover group of patriots for the last several decades, which included, bringing Donald Trump to power. And then eventually part of the QAnon apocalypse is that JFK Jr. will reveal that he has been alive all of this time, and he will announce himself as Trump's running mate. That's been part of QAnon lore for a very long time.
We are living through the most horrible simulation
It sucks.
at this moment.
I hate it here so much.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. All right. On to more fun stuff. July the 18th.
Oh, please.
The Simpsons actor Hank Azaria, star of two great 1999 films, Mystery Men and Cradle Will Rock, as well as Mystery Alaska, and the television movie adaptation of Tuesdays with Morrie, for which he would win the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Miniseries or Movie, marries longtime girlfriend Helen Hunt, whose award-winning sitcom Mad About You ended in May of that year, although it was revived again 20 years later. They had been together for 5 years, as Azaria had made 16 guest appearances on Mad About You. They divorced 1 year later. So sad ending there.
When was Helen Hunt's cameo on The Simpsons? Was it during their marriage? She played
Helen Hunt
Moe's girlfriend.
So yes, that's exactly what it was. Helen Hunt appeared on The Simpsons as Moe's girlfriend in 98 or 97.
Okay.
Around that time.
But it's not post-divorce, because that would be scandalous.
No. Yeah, it would be scandalous. And Hank Azaria had a recurring role in Mad About You for several years. So yeah, they'd been together for a long time, and then I guess marriage did them in. So did not work out, but it all worked out. They lived happily ever after. Everybody's happy. Everybody's good. Hank Azaria's married. He's got kids. He's in that baseball show. It's all good. Did you watch that show? Good. My wife watched it.
I didn't.
It's weird.
I was told that I should, but I never listened to anybody's recommendations because I am in my little neurodivergent. I'm going to rewatch the same things that I watch all the time, and I'm not going to venture out.
I feel you. I'm right there with you. That's why we go back to 1999 and talk about movies that make us comfortable. All right, a couple more before we finish up. July the 22nd, Woodstock 99 Music Festival begins in Rome, New York, and runs until July the 25th, ending earlier than it was intended to. Attended by 200,000 people in oppressive heat and basically no water. It all ends up in violent outbursts and a bunch of sexual assault from a bunch of angry white dudes who are mad that everything was going great for them. And 20 years later, probably stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Jen and I will be talking more about that in a special episode that we are doing about Woodstock 99 next week. So stay tuned for more on Woodstock 99.
I remember watching MTV News as that all unfolded.
Yes.
And what a time to be alive.
God, it
watching
was bad. It felt like the proper implosion to like the 90s. It felt like we've done a lot of things wrong here. Like this is like maybe Limp Bizkit was a mistake. That it's.
Well, I mean, on many levels, Limp Bizkit was a mistake on many levels.
Yeah. Do you remember who else performed at Woodstock 99?
I remember Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
That's the one I remember the most. Metallica, I think.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Who else you got?
Alanis Morissette.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Rage Against the Machine, which is the only I would just go for that. Really? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'd show up for Rage. And then Korn also performed.
Okay.
The Offspring performed.
Okay.
They're rad. The lineup wasn't bad. It just sort of all culminated in fucking Limp Bizkit, and then just a bunch of dudes were like, I don't know what to do with all this anger that I have because I don't. There's no one's sending me off to war.
I'm looking at the lineup now. DMX was there. DMX and Kid Rock and Bush and Creed, everyone's favorite.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of Creed, Do you know that Scott Stapp is playing Frank Sinatra in the new Ronald Reagan movie coming out in August?
No,
Can't believe I
I
said
did
that
not know that
sentence.
about Creed singer Scott Stapp. Sorry, I did not brush up on my Creed news. Keeping up to date.
Yeah, the terrible Dennis Quaid Reagan biopic coming out in August
You know
features
what?
Scott Stapp.
Scott Stapp does seem like the type to be in a Ronald Reagan
Oh,
biopic.
for fucking sure. Oh yeah, 100%. Yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
I had a pastor when I was in a previous life going to church who loved Scott Stapp.
Of
And I'm like,
course. Yeah.
And that's how I know. That's when I started to like, wait a minute. I don't think this is going to turn out well.
Wait a second. Creed's not a good band. This religion's nonsense.
Right. Right. All
What
right.
is
Well, I'm
going
going to
on?
deconvert because I can't get down with people that get down with Creed.
Yeah.
I have a lot of millennial friends who love Creed, and I'm like, you
I
guys
don't
just need to
fucking
stop.
understand. Well, yeah, I
You
had
need to stop.
these were the same friends who my friends who wore like "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets, like loved Creed.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that was me, by the way, in, in
uh-huh.
1998.
Uh-huh.
It was a weird time. It was a weird time.
I Can Take You Higher was like pretty good as like a sort of Pearl Jam doesn't have a new song out right now kind of holdover
Okay. I was like,
song.
do not compare them to Pearl Jam, please.
No, they
No,
wanted
but
to be compared to Pearl Jam. That
I
I'm
know.
not
I was just,
comparing them to
you
Pearl
brought me
Jam.
there. I was a little scared at first, but then you turned it
No,
around. So
I would never
okay.
do that. I would never do that. I'm not a huge Pearl Jam fan, but like, no, I'm not even. That's not happening.
Pearl Jam was my older sister's favorite band, so we were a big Pearl Jam house.
I've come to like I'm always like a decade behind. Like I've come to like stuff from like Vitology lately.
Vitology was the first Pearl Jam album I ever bought for myself.
Really?
Because, she had verses in 10 and like I would just
Right.
listen to it when she listened to it. And my dad liked it too. But Vitology came out when I was in 8th grade. And so I had like, money.
Okay.
That was the
Yeah.
first Pearl Jam album I bought.
Yeah, I listened to a lot of 10 and Versus, obviously. 10 is the one that has like stood the test of time, I think. Versus is sort of two of its time. I just like Eddie Vedder a lot. Like, he's just a cool guy,
Yeah.
Just like him.
Did you get an Eddie Vedder tattoo like in Portlandia? Did you ever see that?
Oh, right. Plus, he's in Singles, which is a great movie.
I love Singles too, and actually, I think the only reason I watched Singles was because Pearl Jam was in it.
Not Campbell Scott. You're like, no,
nah.
It's Pearl Jam. It's a handsome man, that Campbell Scott. All right. Lastly, before we go, wrapping up the month of July, the 86th Tour de France is notable for one reason. It is the first of 7 consecutive Tour de France titles for stupid dumb cheater Lance Armstrong, who would later be disqualified for being a stupid dumb cheater and like probable sociopath. Guy's kind of fucking scary. I'm not going to lie to you. But no, the beginning of Lance Armstrong mania, when suddenly Americans cared about people riding bikes for a few years. And then we have gone back to our normal state of not caring about people riding bikes as a nation.
Fun throwback to return of subject, because I could have sworn, and I was correct, that Sheryl Crow also played at Woodstock 99.
Yeah.
Who famously was linked to Lance Armstrong for a long time. Look at this.
Yes.
Full circle. Good night, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
She was like, well, this Woodstock 99 sucks. I'm going to turn on the Tour de France. Who's this guy? And then the rest is history. Sheryl Crow, I think, was also fake dating Kevin Spacey around this time.
Was that right?
Yeah. I think she was one of the people that Kevin Spacey was faking dating. But he's a giant monster who sucks too. So
why does everyone turn into a giant monster that sucks, John? It's not fair.
Why is everybody who Sheryl Crow hangs out with turned into a giant monster?
And she had that big song with Kid Rock too, and he was always a piece of shit,
right.
but now he's an even bigger piece of shit.
Yes, he is. He has gotten like he is worse than he used to be, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
I like that song was nice. You like the singing. It was nice. Nice little song. Something about a picture, a photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good song. I like Sheryl Crow. She's cool. Anyways, that's it. That's July of 1999. We made it to
Yay.
the end. Congratulations.
We did it.
Anything you wanna promote for yourself before we head out?
Well, I recently was on my friend's podcast called The Au Jus, which
Mm-hmm.
is a sub podcast of From the 108, which is a White Sox specific podcast. And I talked about some trade deadline stuff there. So it's on YouTube if you want to check that out. Just search From the 108. And then if you're on Twitter, you can follow me. I'm at zombie_Jacki, and I spend an ungodly amount of my time there. So if you want to catch me, that's where I'm going to be. Elon be damned. I'm going to go down with the ship.
You can find us at 1999 Podcast on all the social medias. You can email us, 1999@cageclub.me. We will be back shortly with a look at Woodstock 99 next week, followed by our return to normal episodes. Jacki, this was a lot of fun. Really fun talking to you. It's good to talk to a baseball person.
Anytime. 1999. I was 17 years old. This is my prime. I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
Awesome. And we'll have you back to talk about the movie in the near future as well. So, and until next time, look out for dogs.